Hi, Ann.
I'm glad to see you.
Yeah.
We've been so busy since I've been here, and I said to Rick in an email this morning, I'll be happy to have the time on stage to talk to you because it's been so hard to find the time.
Yeah. We did. Some of you saw the interview on 207. That was very nice of them to do that last night, and a little NPR skit.
That was 207.
Yeah. Thank you. So we're just going to launch in here and talk about. We're going to talk about whatever it turns out we want to talk about.
Sure.
I have some questions in mind, but something better may turn up. So we'll just go. But okay. I wanted to start out sort of at the back, talking about your most recent novel, State of Wonder, and one particular aspect of it that kind of blew me away when I read it, which has to do with the various kinds of suspense that you employ in that book. I happen to believe that in a way, all good novels are suspense novels, not in the genre sense that we normally talk about, but in another sense, you should be riveted, right? We want to know how things are going to come out. But there are various kinds of suspense, and State of Wonder is a kind of clinic, I think, in suspense writing. And there were two scenes that I thought I would offer up just as a way of entering the subject of suspense and let you comment on them. The first is near the beginning of the book, which the protagonist, Marina, with her lover, Mr. Fox, has the terrible duty of going to the house of a colleague who has gone to the Amazon for this drug company that they both work for, and who has died there. And they have to tell Anders' wife and family that her husband and the father of their children is dead. From the moment they walk in the door with this vital piece of information to communicate, what is it, like 4 or 5 pages later, they still haven't broken the news, and the suspense of that is astonishing. You know what they have to communicate. So it's in that sense, it's like a Hitchcock film, right? You're so far ahead of the characters that the suspense is astonishing. And then later on, about midway through the book, there is an incredible scene, just as long, maybe a little bit longer, in which a live anaconda snake is hauled on. See, some of you read this. Yeah, this live anaconda snake is hauled onto the boat, and it's thrashing, and the people that we've come by this point to care deeply about are in terrible danger. But what I was fascinated by was how masterful you are at both of those things. That is, not telling us something and allowing the suspense to build from what's not happening. And then, 100 pages later, give us a scene that could have come out of a 19th century adventure novel. Nicely done.
Thank you. Thank you. You know what? I don't know if this is the proper response, but I'm going to tell you what those two scenes are based on.
Good.
Because I pride myself in not writing autobiographical fiction, and yet if you brought up any scene in any book, I would say, oh yeah, actually, I remember what that happened. The first scene, we had some friends, and it was two best friends, and one of the best friends was on the table having surgery for pancreatic cancer. And the families of the two best friends, Debbie Sobel, were waiting. And we got the call, my husband's a doctor, that she had died on the table. And we were going over to the hospital to be with these two families. Well, when we got there, they were in the waiting room, and they were happy. They were playing cards. They were the two families, the friends, they were all together, and they were waiting to hear about the surgery. And when we walked in, my husband said, "I'm going to go get the surgeon. Wait here." And I sat down with these people. Oh, it was horrible. And I knew that she was dead. There is her husband, there are her children, there are their best friends, and they didn't know.
Yeah.
And it was 10 minutes that Carl went off to find the surgeon and bring him back, and then he brought him back, and the surgeon told them.
Right.
But I just kept thinking, in their world, she's still alive.
Right.
And I'm not the one. Why in the world am I the one who
Right.
knows? Why am I the one who has this piece of information? I'm certainly not going to tell them. And then to come in and watch the surgeon who did, and this guy is a difficult, largely unfriendly person. And he did the most beautiful job. I will love him forever for the way he knelt down and took the husband's hand and told him what had happened. And but it was sort of like watching a film in reverse, because I know that this scene is coming,
Right.
and I'm just waiting for this scene. The other one, they pull an anaconda onto the boat. That actually happened.
Holy shit. I was hoping you weren't going to say that, Ann.
That was crazy. So I was in the Amazon in the happy, beautiful days when Gourmet magazine was still in existence. And those were all my friends. And the travel editor, Bill Sertle, was a great friend of mine. And I would call Bill and say, "I'm writing a book about the Amazon. I need to find me something to do in the Amazon." Mm-hmm. And it's not that I minded paying for the trips. I don't know how to book a trip to the Amazon. I don't know where to go. I just don't even know where to start.
These are anaconda snake recipes you're going to
Exactly. You know, the hard thing is boning them.
Right. Especially when they're still alive.
So, you know, he finds this. I want a very specific kind of boat. I don't want a cruise ship, and I don't want a raft with rats. I want something small and nice.
Yeah.
So he finds me this boat. It's a new boat, and every day they put the guests, and there were maybe 16 of us, into 2 open boats, 8 in a boat, and we would go off for hours and hours down the tributaries of the Amazon. So we're in this boat, and there's one guy, this is maybe our second day on the boat, we don't know these people. There's one guy on the boat who is much smarter than the rest of us and much smarter than the guides, and he knows the name of every bird and every tree and every piece of moss, and he can hear the monkeys stop the boat. You know, he has binoculars that are this long, and he lets us all see the monkeys, and he explains what they're. And we're going to a ranger station, and it's about a 3-hour trip, and we do not see another living soul the whole time, and we're going right, left, right, left, right, left. And at one point, we pull into a lettuce pond, and Greg, this guy, says, "Stop the boat, you know, a little to the right, a little to the left." And he sticks his hand in the water, and he pulls an anaconda out. Well, this is a 2-part story. The first time, this is the anaconda's head. The first time he gets the anaconda here, big mistake.
Right.
And he drops the snake. And we go, and everybody's like, "Mother of God!" And we go on to the ranger station and have our picnic lunch. And we finish, and we come back, and gosh, there's that same lettuce pond. Well, let's go back in, a little to the right, a little to the... It turns out anacondas are creatures of habit, and if you lose one, go back in a couple of hours. It will be right where you left it. And damned if he doesn't stick his hand back in the water, this time getting it right here, and he pulls the whole anaconda into the boat. Well, now there are 2 boats, and we are not in visual distance of one another. So our guide calls the other boat and says, "We got an anaconda!" And the other boat says, "Wait for us."
That's right.
So we spend 20 minutes in this boat, which is, you know, from the podium to me.
Not big enough.
It is not, and I'm not a snake phobe. And I really want to get out of the boat.
Yeah.
But what do we know? We know there are anacondas.
That's
in
right.
the
That's what
water.
this has been established.
And this thing whips around.
It's not just lettuce.
And all the anaconda wants to do is eat this guy's head.
Yeah.
And he's wrestling and he's giving us a lecture.
Yeah.
And saying, you know, you'll see there are 3 rows of teeth.
Yeah.
And it smells like nothing you have ever smelled.
Yeah.
I mean, all clothes must be thrown away.
Yeah.
And we all take pictures, and it's all wrapped around his chest. And then, you know, we have to pull it off of him. And in the other boat, there are Russians, which, need I say more?
Yeah.
But the Russians...
Ratcheting up the suspense.
The
is what I'm talking.
The Russians have a News Channel 5 style camera. You know, one of those things that sits on your shoulder. And he's like, he wants to do a film of the anaconda. And when the Russian arrives in the other boat with his beautiful bored blonde wife, and he says, put it back in the water and catch it again. So it turns out when we were coming back, and we've now put the snake back in, that Greg Greer is a herpetologist, and what he does, he works with the travel. Greg Greer, you can rent him. It is online. Mr. Greg's Reptile Roadshow. He will go with you anywhere in the world and pick up anything.
Wow.
And tell you its genus and species and explain the patterns of its teeth. I asked him if he had ever, this was the first anaconda he'd ever caught in Peru. I asked him if he'd ever been bitten by an anaconda, and he said yes. Once he got it here, and it swung around and got him on the calf, and they're like pit bulls. They lock, they don't let go.
Yeah.
And he said he said it took like 2 hours working the paddle in between. I said, couldn't you have just cut his head off? And he was like, brother snake?
Yeah.
You know? So when I was writing that scene, the other great part of that story is when we were coming back, I said, Greg, how old were you the first time you ever picked up a snake? And he said, and I kid you not, I was 5. And I was like...
Yeah.
But when I wrote that scene, originally Morena had a doctor's bag with her. And so she's going through the bag and she finds a scalpel. And she saws through the snake with a scalpel. And Greg says, well, that would take 3 hours and 30 scalpels.
Yeah.
He said it would be like trying to kill a snake with an X-Acto knife. It would take forever.
Right.
He said there is a machete on that boat.
Yeah.
There has never been a boat in the Amazon where there's not a machete.
Yeah, that makes
and
sense.
you've got 3 minutes, and cutting the head off isn't going to make any difference.
Right.
I was like, Greg, that is so helpful.
Yeah.
Thank you. So
Yeah.
The moral of the story, make friends along the way.
Now, I just want to give this guy's name because I know that there are a number of you out there who are going to want to contact him about booking your own journey.
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
The other lovely suspense in the book too is very subtle and quite wonderful, I think. And it's I don't know how to label it exactly. It's maybe a thematic suspense or something like that. It's a kind of undercurrent. It's not like, you know, the anaconda up in the boat, and it's not like the suspense of having to tell someone that a loved one has died. But there's a question that's posed fairly early on in the book about whether Marina, the main character, wants children and has felt deprived by not having them. And the drug that they're trying to isolate, the drug that they're trying to isolate in the Amazon is a fertility drug, and it's a drug that supposedly allows women to be pregnant well into their 70s. So there's this one particular tribe. Yeah, I know.
I always say it's a horror novel.
But as the novel progresses, we get introduced to this wonderful, I don't want to even call him a minor character, he's a major character, Easter, the little boy, for whom we begin to realize Marina is beginning to have a very very maternal feelings for this for this child, and we begin to wonder whether she will be able to give him up. And I want to say too much more about the ending, but the whole motherhood issue plays out, throughout the novel, and you're actually left with some interesting questions at the end of that book about Marina and what the rest of her life is going to be like that. But I guess as an author, the question that I would, seeing something work out that way, something that you've planted in the first couple pages of a novel, and seeing it resolve, 350 pages later, the writer in me wants to ask. First of all, it's lovely to ask a question like that and then move towards an answer all the way through. It does generate a kind of suspense. But the writer in me wants to ask, how much of that did you know at the beginning, and how much of that did you figure out as you were along the journey? Did you know Easter was going to appear when he did?
I'm somebody who really knows most of it before I start.
See, I knew you were going to say that.
I do the work in my head.
Yeah.
And I'm very interested to ask you about this. My friend Elizabeth McCracken, who has a fantastic new book out, Thunderstruck, go out and buy it. Collection of short stories, amazing. And Elizabeth will write 6 different novels. I mean, it's not, just every draft is a completely different book. If a character walks into a room, she says when her great-great-grandmother left the old country, left the shtetl with the pots and pans, and then brings the family up to present day, and then throws all of that out.
Right. Yeah.
I couldn't bear it.
Yeah.
So I spend a long time doing the work in my head. I revise as I go along. But there are certain things there are a lot of little things that I don't know. With State of Wonder, the ending, it's sort of like door A or door B. I didn't know for a long time which way that was going to go. But the characters I do always have in place. Easter has been a really funny story. Because every place I go, people always are like, Easter, he's like my own son. I love him.
Yeah.
Oh,
Well, you do come to feel just remarkable love for that boy.
Oh, we love him.
It's such a hard life, and he's so courageous.
He's so brave.
Yeah.
And he's deaf. And that was an interesting thing, because when I was on book tour for Run, a woman came up to me in the signing line one night in Washington, and she said, I'm an interpreter, and I would like to see a character in one of your books who's deaf, and that the fact that he's deaf is not an issue. No one talks about it. It's not a book about deafness. It's no big, he's just deaf. And I was like, yes, that's a great idea. I can do that for you. I will put a deaf kid in my next book. Yeah. And so, Easter doesn't hear, he doesn't speak, and yet he intuits the needs of everyone, and he fulfills their desires. I don't have I'm going to tell you a story that is going to make you like me a lot less. I don't have children, and I feel really good about that. I never, ever wanted children. And Easter to me is like a joke child.